Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, you know, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Hello, and welcome back to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. My name is Brooke Brigham. I'm an attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham. I'm the therapist. Hello.
Hello. Today we are going to be talking about a docu-series that is airing on Netflix called Killer Sally.
Yes. Ooh. I had never heard this story before. This was all new.
Yeah, I have to say, it's very well done, I think. It's an emotional roller coaster.
It is. Well, and also, I really thank you, Netflix. 3 episodes. Perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, really, honestly, it could have been 2. But, I mean, it's just, I really like these short, to the point documentaries.
I do, too.
It's not dragged on and on and on and on and on. Because a lot of them, especially, you know, this documentary, it's violent. What happened is violent. Everything that's going on is violent. I mean, it's called Killer Sally, for crimini's sake. So I do think that there is something to be said for these really violent docuseries where less is more, you know?
I don't have the attention span for those, 10 episode docuseries. I hardly ever finish them. I just get burnt out, you know?
Well, you kind of want to either, binging, like, I'm so used to binging now that if I can't binge, I'm like, I get very upset. And there's some great shows on TV, but I always just feel like, I just want to binge this. I just don't want Abbott Elementary once a week.
Yeah.
Not half an hour.
Not many shows do that anymore.
So, do you want to describe what is Killer Sally about? You want to give us a synopsis?
So this is about a couple, Sally and Ray McNeil, who were both bodybuilders. And bodybuilding is kind of the backdrop a little bit of this, but it really is sort of your old-fashioned true crime, wife kills abusive husband story. And it's just different because Sally is not your typical, quote-unquote, typical abuse victim, or at least how society would think of an abuse victim, because let me back up and just kind of give a little bit of background for, her story. She was abused as a child, physically abused by her stepfather. She ended up, she was married before she was married to Ray. That husband was abusive to her. They were only married for 4 years. She had I didn't realize this. This was not part of the documentary, but she actually had 3 children with her husband. And the 3rd child was put up for adoption.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that.
Because in the documentary, you just see
the 2
children. But, she was used to being abused. I think she was kind of seemed a little odd maybe as a child, but she found refuge in sports. She was very good at diving. She was very athletic. And that led her eventually to get into working out and bodybuilding. And she met, did she go? Actually, so after her divorce, she joined the Marines, and she was set up on a date with Ray McNeil, who was also a Marine. And they began dating in 1987. They got married after just a couple of months. And he was a bodybuilder too. He was huge, gigantic man, probably almost 300 pounds of just muscle. And she was, very, very large as well. But they both were taking steroids. She was very open about that. She was actually working to support his bodybuilding career and buying the steroids for him and trying to be supportive of that. But he was also abusive to her, and he started being violent with her instantly as soon as they got married. He was also violent towards her children.
Which is, I think the children, that their section, I think, is the most heartbreaking part of this entire show.
It really is, because the theme of this, it's a cycle of violence.
Yes. Yeah.
Family cycles of violence. And one of the things that Sally says that Ray did throughout the relationship was choking. He was really into choking her. And I think there's something about that, I don't know what it is. What does it say about someone who chokes someone? I think there's something about that. I'm not quite sure psychologically, but I mean, it was so common to the point where her daughter testified later in her trial about how she knew her mom was choking because she would hear the sounds that her mom would start to make, like these kind of gurgling, gasping sounds. And she knew that meant her mother was being choked during this abuse. So their relationship was not good. And at some point, Ray decided that he was going to try to leave her. He had a girlfriend who he was serious about. Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of affairs, I think. But there was one who was serious, and she was actually in the documentary. I think
she was Marianne.
The police were interviewing her. And so and maybe Sally sensed this, that he was getting ready to leave. And so it was Valentine's Day, 1995. Ray had not come home. It's getting later and later, and she believes that he's out with his girlfriend. And so she claims that she was going to go down to this bar that he went to see if he was there to confront him. And that before she could leave the house, he came home. And they started arguing, and it led to violence. He started choking her. She was in fear for her life, and she got away from him at some point, ran into her bedroom where she had a shotgun, came out, shot him in the stomach, and then shot him a second time in the face. And the forensics in the trial put that story into question a little bit.
We'll get into that in a bit. Because that, to me, feels like that's the crux of the story or the controversy is, was she in imminent danger?
Right. And that is the whole...
That was the whole point. Case, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the whole premise of what has been known as the battered woman syndrome. That's kind of an outdated term. But in 1979, there was a psychologist named Lenore Walker who coined that term. She wrote a book called The Battered Woman Syndrome. And over the years, it became the basis for courts allowing testimony in cases of self-defense where the woman was a victim of domestic violence and she didn't kill her partner in the act of the violence, but killed him afterwards.
Yes.
And that the thing is, the basis of self-defense is you have to be in imminent danger. But she explained that the psychology of abuse is such that you get to a point where you basically have PTSD that's caused by the abuse, and then it causes you to basically feel like you could be killed at any moment.
Yeah.
And so it happens all the time. It's kind of a kill or be killed situation, almost like if you were a soldier in war, or, you believe that you need to protect yourself and usually your children as well. And you need to get rid of this person or they're going to kill you.
Yes.
And the person could be sitting in front of the TV on the couch, doing nothing. So that defense I don't know. It's kind of hard because the trial, the coverage of the trial, I felt was there was a lot of focus on the prosecution, but the defense attorney who was also, so they interviewed both the DA and Sally's defense attorney. And the defense attorney I don't remember him talking at all about what kind of a defense he put on in terms of battered woman syndrome.
He was, unfortunately, he seemed very nice and very competent, but maybe not as dynamic. Or, it was a little unclear. I think that he felt also, I don't know. I can't really, it's hard for me to put my finger on it, but I got the sense that he didn't quite know what to make of any of this either.
Right.
Because Sally testified and he was very adamant about her not testifying. It seems like they had kind of an interesting relationship. I don't know. It doesn't sound like either she didn't trust him because every time he kept saying, please don't testify, and she testifies. I can't tell what was going on there. But that prosecutor, man, he was out to get her. He was like, gonna convict. But
yeah,
I just want to back up here. Okay. So first off, she obviously, Sally, you learn this very quickly, which is Sally is impulsive. She meets the first guy, she falls in love with him. They get married right away. They have these children, and then, the abuse starts, and then she runs off to California, and then she meets Ray. They date for 2 months, and then they get married, and she just kind of seems to be going. And very early on, this dynamic happens between the two of them where his bodybuilding, his career, what he's doing for himself is far more important than what she was doing, because she was starting to establish a reputation for herself as well. It was almost kind of like, oh, Ray's in my life, so I'm going to put all of my time and focus and on Ray and Ray's career and what he was doing, and I'm going to make my career such that I'm going to just do whatever I need to do to make money to... I think that switch happened very quickly.
Yeah, because she was an amateur.
Yeah.
She'd started bodybuilding, I believe, before she even met him. She had done some military shows. Yeah. So she was an amateur bodybuilder. And she said in the...
Because she won. I want to say...
She won a
competition.
Titles.
I know I wrote this down. Oh, and she says it in the beginning. 1987, Valentine's Day, 1987, she wins the Armed Forces bodybuilding female division.
Yeah. I mean, that's a thing. Sounds like a big deal.
Something. And then 2 months later, she meets him, and, she's done.
She did. And she said in the documentary, she said, I would have liked to have turned pro.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she put everything into him, and it was all about him. And so in order to make money to support his career, she started doing these, she did videos, but first she started, I don't know how you want to describe it. Like men would pay her. There's like a fetish that
they were called schmoes
that some men have, where they want like a really big, strong, muscly woman to kind of throw them around and put them in a headlock and squeeze them with their thighs, fully clothed.
Yes.
But, it's a strange thing. And so these men would pay her like $300 an hour for her to just rough him up for an hour.
Well, yeah. And that other guy, he was making videos with her, right? And then he would sell the videos direct to people who had this fetish. So that's how she made a living, is just wrestling and then doing the strong, like, I can lift this much weight. I can do, 20 chin-ups, the strong woman.
Right.
Who knew there were all of these subsets of things out there? I had no idea. But she was doing that to help him get rolling. And then they get into the discussion around steroids and that he was, steroids are very expensive. And so she was earning money for him to use steroids and taking her children down to Mexico to buy steroids, to bring it back in to the country for him. And I think that there is something about this, and I don't, in terms of this battered women syndrome, because obviously it wasn't just the relationship with Ray that made her a battered woman. This was, she had been around violence and in violence her entire life.
Right. And she was actually demoted and discharged in the Marines for violent behavior and, just yelling at people, just being inappropriate.
She had a history of getting written up. But what I was going to say about what I just think is so interesting is how quickly her devotion to him and his career happened. Just, it felt like overnight, but she was willing to risk prison time and take her children to another country to get these drugs for this man. I guess I just wonder what this hold is. It felt like he had this real hold over her.
And she watched him physically abuse her kids.
Yes, that too. Yes, which was it's very heartbreaking. I think the most heartbreaking character is her son, John.
Yeah.
I felt like he was...
He has a look in his eyes like he is just kind of barely hanging on.
Yes.
Barely there.
Yes. So there's all of this violence. There's this tremendous devotion to him in what he's doing, and all of it's about him. And what's interesting about the entire story, because the big issue in the court case was, beyond, there's the imminent danger issue, but was Sally, this large bodybuilding woman, was she really in danger? Was she, she was known, her wrestling persona is known as Killer Sally. She posed with a shotgun in her hand that she's here to hurt you. And so what happened was the prosecutor took all of these incidents, her time in the military, the images of her being Killer Sally, what people would say about her, the fact that she was a violent person, that when she found out that Ray was having this affair with Marianne, she was like picking up the phone, calling Marianne.
Oh, she had beat up a woman in a bar.
Yeah, threatening. Yeah, she was very, very violent. She would go out and hurt people. So that was the big question, was she really, was she in danger? Was she abused?
Was she capable of being a victim?
Was she capable? That's a better way of saying it. Thank you. Was she capable of being a victim? And that's the big question mark. And I think when I finished watching the docuseries, I was just like, all of this is true. Like, yes, she was a violent person. Yes, she was a victim, and she had battered women syndrome. And I think she had it long before she even met Ray. And I think that she had PTSD, and I think that her behavior was outrageous, and that she, I think this docuseries is so interesting because we so badly want to make people either heroes or villains.
Right.
We want to put everybody in a category, some way, shape, or form. And the reality is that she is all those things.
Yeah.
She's
all those things
together.
are true.
All these things. She is a violent person, that she made a lot of questionable choices, that she did things that she regrets. And at the same time, based on everything that she said and what anybody else was saying, even if you just hear from his friends about their relationship, because his friends are really defending him. Ray's friends are really centered on her, but really centered on him. But the thing is that but the friends even admitted they had this really destructive, horrendous relationship. So it can all be true.
They annoyed me because, I feel like they were there to defend their friend, yet I also felt like they knew. Mm-hmm. They knew what was up. But
Yes.
yet they just chose to just go on TV or, you know, be
What
filmed.
was that one guy? What was his name? I wrote it down. Is it
DJ something.
Jeffers? Oh God, if I got that wrong,
I think so. I think that's it.
DJ. But he was interesting because in the beginning you got the sense that he was like, yeah, Sally was really violent and, you know, Ray wanted to leave her. And I think she was pissed that he was having an affair with Marianne. I think, and she was rightly so to be pissed.
Yeah.
I think she felt like she had devoted her entire life to this man and his career and everything that he was doing. And then he decides to have an affair with someone and, you know, is going to leave her. So I think all of that is true. But the friend DJ had this attitude of, well, she was the violent one. And, you know, but at the same time, he tells this very bizarre story of the night where she shoots Ray, where she didn't want him to leave. She didn't want that DJ guy to leave. Do you remember him telling this story? I thought that was so weird. It was like, he was
the night of the murder?
I think so. It was a little confusing, but if it wasn't the night of the murder, it was another night. But I feel like it was the night of the murder because he talks about he's at the house. She's really upset. Ray hasn't come home. He wants to go get food. He's hungry, this DJ guy. He wants to get food. She's like, please don't leave. Please don't leave. Please don't leave. And he's like, I'm just going to go get food. I'll be back. She's like, are you going to be back? Are you going to be back? Are you going to be back? And he's like, yes, I'm going to be back. And then by the time he comes back, the police are already there.
Yeah. So she knew there was going to be a confrontation.
Yes.
And she
knew it was going to be bad.
Yeah.
And so to me, it feels like what I don't understand, maybe from the legal perspective, what I don't understand is, to me, that's not somebody who is planning on murdering their spouse.
Right. I want to have a
someone who's
witness
like,
here. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm alone. I'm scared.
Yeah.
Where are you going? Don't go get a sandwich. Stay here.
Yeah. And, you know, we didn't see a lot of her defense in the documentary, so it's really hard to know what happened, but it doesn't really seem like she got much of a defense at all.
No.
And, you know, it was coupled with the fact that she, excuse me, she was arrested and she just started talking to the police. The worst possible thing you can do, just for everybody out there. I don't care how innocent you are. I don't care like how much the police say that they can help you if you just talk to them. It's all a lie. It's meant to trap you. She spilled it to the police. And then, you know, I don't know, her lawyer should have stopped her from taking the stand. I don't care that she wanted to. That was horrible. It didn't seem like much of a battered woman defense was put on. It also didn't seem like they put on any evidence about her past. The fact that this woman has lived her entire life with abuse, trauma, PTSD, all of it. She got a completely inadequate defense here. I mean, it was so sad, like just to watch it. It was just so sad. And then, you know, like the prosecutor also didn't understand what was happening. I mean, not like he would have cared, but like he made that remark that, because after she'd been interrogated for 10 hours, she laid down on the floor of the interrogation room, I guess, and took a nap. And he said that was evidence that, you know, she's some cold-blooded killer.
Yeah.
And it's like, what?
Yeah, I'm really, really sick of people assuming that they know how people are going to react going through one of the most awful things that has ever happened to them. I mean, yeah, she's had a hell of a night. She's going to lay down. And the other thing is, you can look at it in a different way, which is if she felt like she was scared out of her mind all the time of dying, she finally was able to relax. Like this person that's been trying to kill her for 8 years is now gone. And yeah, that prosecutor really bugged me, but these prosecutors always do. They're so
pompous.
They're really pompous, and they're always so like, this is the law. This is the way things are gotta be. I hate that kind of attitude. It's like
he was
shades of gray. People.
Yeah, and he was so cruel towards her.
He was. He instantly didn't like her. I think there was a lot of issues in all of this. I don't understand why they kind of didn't. I think the steroid stuff is a big deal.
Oh, of course.
I think it was a huge deal. Of course, she talked about this. She said 3 days before a meet, he would start upping his steroid intake, and that he was 3 days out from
He had 5 different kinds of steroids in his system.
When they got So, and she had steroids in her system too, but she didn't get the good steroids. He got all the good steroids. So of course the steroids were a huge part. They were both also in the military. That's also, violence and a certain attitude towards how you handle things and handle conflict. So I don't understand why she wasn't able to have a better defense. I really don't.
Yeah, and they
I
also
think that's a money thing. I mean, I think the part of it is she didn't have any money.
Well, he was a court-appointed attorney. That's not to say that court-appointed attorneys are bad, but he really seemed like he was phoning it in.
Yeah,
he really didn't. He was talking so nonchalantly about it, and then also the documentary didn't go into Ray's background really at all.
Well, she did mention something that he grew up in poverty. So she said it through her. She said Ray told her he grew up in poverty. His mother gave him up at 2 weeks old.
Oh, that's
right. He was raised by an aunt, I believe. Yeah. I think this is South Carolina.
Yeah.
Sally went home with Ray at one point to his aunt's home, and she said it was like rat infested.
That's right. I'd forgotten all about that. Maybe it blocked that out.
Yeah, and that he also told her that there was another boy staying with the aunt.
Oh, and he sexually
abused Ray.
I completely blocked that out.
And that the aunt said he had a short fuse. That's what she called him. So, but that's the thing. The two of them together both grew up in these really abusive, awful households. They find each other, and then they pump themselves up with steroids, and have a gun at home.
Yeah.
And, it's a little bit of like, why didn't this happen sooner?
Right, because they both were... they were using like the muscles as a form of protection.
Yes,
because they had experienced so much abuse. And yeah, if you're fearing for being sexually molested every night, well, yeah, you are going to have a short fuse.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I can't believe I'd forgotten about all that. So yeah.
That happened to me because I went back and took some notes, and it was very quick. There's a lot of information in this. So that's how I was able to pick that up, because I had forgotten about that. But I think that, the DV cycle that she talked about, she did at one point. So this is, of course, what everybody's big argument is. Why didn't she leave him? And why did she keep putting up with this? And she talks about this, that he beat her up. Sally reported it to the Marines. They took Ray to the brig, and then they let Ray go.
Mm-hmm.
And Ray then proceeds to beat the shit out of her until she drops the charges. And then her sergeant or whomever's like, why did you drop the charges?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, why did you let him out? This is the biggest problem with the cycle is that it's that no one is really ever protecting these women, and they are so vulnerable to this. And if you're in Sally's position, you've dedicated 8 years, your whole, so much time and energy into this man, into this relationship. She loved him. She didn't want to let him go, even though he was abusing her.
Yeah. And where was she going to go?
Yeah. That's the other problem.
Didn't have a lot of money. She had 2 kids. She doesn't want to lose her kids' home, I mean, as awful as it was, like, at least they had a roof over their heads.
But I got the sense that they were sort of kind of getting ready to go. Like, the kids had said to mom, like, listen, mom, this guy is not our biological dad. You can leave. I remember her saying, like, she was very close to, like, packing up the kids, maybe returning back home to her parents.
Pennsylvania.
And trying to maybe, do that. And then all of this happened and changed the course of everything. It's the cycle is it's so hard. I think it's so hard for people to understand it if you're not in it, but it is think about it like anything that goes on in our lives, right? Where you say to yourself, okay, I'll get better about this. This will be better. I'll change these things. I'll do these things differently with the hope and desire that,
Oh yeah,
you know,
I mean, it's
some part of this cycle will change or end.
It's very common. We do it all the time. You know, like if we've invested anything into anything, a person, a project, whatever, we're very, even if it's not working, we're very slow to admit that and let it go. And I think that's human nature. But, so her children, so yeah, one of the worst things I've ever witnessed is that scene where she has to tell her children
Oh, yeah.
at the police station that, you know, she has to go to jail and there's going to be a trial and, you know, she's going to try to see, well, first she tells them they're going to take you to a shelter.
Oh, God.
And then I think she might have said she was going to try to see if her parents could, you know, they could go stay with her parents. And, you know, the poor boy, he's saying, well, Mom, just tell them that, you know, it was they won't send you to jail if you tell them it was self-defense. And I mean, it was, I can't even talk about it right now. It's making me so upset. But anyway, they did have to go and live with her parents in Pennsylvania. And because it was so far away, they're in California, they really couldn't come visit her. And once she was convicted, they only got the grandmother would bring them like once a year, but it was just so awful and horrible for everybody that they kind of just stopped doing it. And then,
well, the one good thing was, though, right, that her parents were no longer alcoholics.
Yeah, she said they were terrible parents, but that they were good grandparents.
Yeah. So the one nice thing was that where John, and is it Shantina?
Shantina.
The two of them at least had a non-abusive the rest of
their childhood.
You know, you're just like, oh my gosh. But yeah, at least that was better.
But then, then they both ended up enlisting in the military.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Both of them decided to go into the military.
And John did like 5 tours in Afghanistan. Shantina did 2 or 3 tours. Of course, they both ended up with PTSD because of that.
On top of the other thing.
Right. Shantina ended up in an abusive relationship herself. John developed a drug problem as a result of all the PTSD.
And he was abusive. He says that.
Oh,
he said, my whole life I've been around violence, and he was abusive towards his children's mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a son. So, you know, the cycle is just continuing, and it's so, so sad to listen to the two of them. They're, you know, interviewed as adults.
Yeah, John is, I couldn't really put my finger on it, but it's like, you're right. There's something, I don't know if it's checked out, or I just feel like he is hanging on by a thread. That's how I feel. Well, so, you know, about 10 plus years ago, I worked at a drug and alcohol treatment center, and we had the contract for the military. And so I worked with a lot of military, a lot of guys in the military, and spouses and kids and all of that. And it was interesting talking to them because a lot of them had been to, this was 10 years ago. So a lot of them had been to Iraq, Afghanistan, all of, and, you know, what was interesting is a lot of them said to me, they said that honestly, I have more PTSD from my childhood than I do from the military.
Wow.
Because there was this cycle, right, where, you know, a lot of them had graduated from, they're graduating from high school. They either are having problems, they're either getting into trouble locally where they lived, and the military was kind of the only place to go.
Right.
And their only ability, you know, the only option that they had, or they, you know, the only way to break the cycle of what was going on in their homes was to go to the military to be able to be guaranteed with maybe a college education and roof over your head and all of that. Right. So, and then they get sent, I mean, this is sort of a bit bit of this cycle is you don't have a lot of family support. Things are falling apart. You join the military. You then are sent off to a country who you fight in these wars. Then God forbid you get injured. They pump you up with they give you a bunch of opiates, and then they send you back home and say, okay, adjust now. And those opiates, you can't have them anymore. Give them back. And that's how they ended up in our treatment center, was that a lot of them were, going from one bad abusive situation to another. And so it doesn't surprise me to hear. I was surprised to hear that both the kids decided to go into the military, but at the same time, I can see how this family kind of kept going in this circle, because those kids, what else were they going to do? It was like the military was probably the only option. So they joined the military, and then,
a way to get an education, or a way to, establish a career, or maybe they were trying to redo something.
Yeah. Maybe
trying to do it over better than
how they had done,
than their mother did.
Yeah.
But, so Sally, she got, she was found guilty of second degree murder. She got a sentence of 19 years to life.
Which I was really surprised. But again, I think that's that poor, I think she had better defense. I think she could have gotten voluntary or involuntary manslaughter. No? You think
she was lucky she didn't get first degree.
Oh, okay.
Because voluntary manslaughter, there's no intent to kill. That's like a car, drunk driving, kill someone drunk driving. Second degree murder, you intend to kill the person, but it's in the heat of the moment. There's no premeditation.
Okay.
First degree is premeditation. So it's pretty hard to argue that when you point a gun at someone and fire it, that there's no intent to kill.
So explain this to me, because this seemed to be the, pardon the pun, the smoking gun of the entire defense. Not the defense, sorry, the prosecution, which is that she shot him and then went back into her bedroom, right, got more ammunition, reloaded, and went back out and shot him again.
Yeah, because her story was that she first shot him in the stomach, and that he was, still upright and started coming for her, and she shot him a second time in the face, and that's what got him down. But the prosecution said that the forensics didn't support that, because the blood splatter from the second shot went up. There was like a lamp where there was like all this blood splatter from the bottom of the lamp up to the top. So that meant that he would have been shot while he was down on the ground. And they claim that she went back into the bedroom and reloaded. I think there must have been a shell casing there. So
they're saying she reloaded from the first shot to the second shot, or they're saying that she had those first two shots, then went back into the bedroom, reloaded again as if she was going to shoot him again?
That I can't remember.
Okay.
I just know that they said that she reloaded, and there was only 2 shots fired, so it must have been in between the two.
Well, that's it. There's only 2 shots fired, but I didn't understand. Did she reload from the 2 shots, or did she shoot him twice and then, as if like, I'm going to go and protect myself, I'm still worried.
Yeah.
I'm going to go reload.
I'm not sure about that, but
then so an illegal question though. So she said that when she started to go towards the room and towards like where the gun was, that he knew that's where she was going. Right? He knew she was going to bring out this gun, or that that's what she was going to do. And that she then felt that the minute if I'm understanding this correctly, is she saying that because he knew she was going towards the gun, that then that made her feel like it was either her or him? I was a little confused from what her thinking was in the moment.
Yeah,
which I can also understand that her thinking.
Yeah,
her
story is not crystal clear, nor would you expect it to be, because, and she even says when she's recounting all this, she even says, it's hard for me to remember some things. Obviously, she doesn't remember every single thing that happened in the sequence, and who knows? And also sometimes the mind will fill in things
Yes.
that didn't really happen. So, you know, in terms of the sequence of it, I don't know, but I think the bottom line was, I think it had to do with the choking, that she was, and her daughter testified in court that she heard the choking sounds that night. So I think he had choked her, and she got really scared, and she'd been choked so many times, and she talked about how awful the choking was, because that it made her really feel like she was going to die. Mm-hmm. And I think that just set her off. Mm-hmm. She was like, fuck this. Like, this is not happening to me again. And went and got the gun, and I don't know what he was doing at the time. Mm-hmm. But he obviously didn't think she was going to get a gun, or he would have tried to stop her.
Yeah, well, and then the argument of the prosecution and his friends was that he was coming home to tell her he had spent Valentine's Day. So Ray had spent Valentine's Day with Marianne or another woman, that he then was coming home to tell her that it was going to be over. And that's the part I was just like, but if this guy was really checked out of this relationship, like if your theory is correct, that she's the aggressor and she's the violent one, and she was mad that he was going to leave her for someone else, and that he had spent Valentine's with someone else, so he's going to come home and break up with her. But to me, it kind of feels like, then what? I don't think Ray had any intention of leaving her or moving out. Do you know what I mean? Like, why come home and choke her? Why keep doing it? Like, I feel like he would have been gone. He would have been gone already if he really just didn't want to be with her anymore. Why come home at the end of the night and get in this huge fight with her?
Yeah, why not just stay out all night?
Yeah.
Personally, I don't believe that. I think that's just the narrative they created for the trial.
Yeah.
That's pure speculation on their part.
Yes.
I don't know what Ray was
thinking
or what he was going to do when he got home. You're right. It makes no sense. That is literally something they constructed for the trial. Because, a trial's a presentation. You have to put on this story that makes sense, and you have to fill in all these little blanks for the jurors so that they buy into whatever you're selling. Mm-hmm. So, who knows? And a lot of the stuff she says, she doesn't even know.
Yeah.
But it happened. And, quite frankly, I was surprised that she got out after 25 years. Because a lot of times with these cases, where it's 20 to life or whatever to life, you never get out of prison.
Yeah, I was actually surprised she would serve so long. See, 19 to life, I mean, maybe I was a little bit like her friend who was like, I think they're going to let her out after 10 years and 15 years. Like, maybe I have that friend's attitude. But I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised by the length of the sentence, but I was really surprised that she wasn't, she got out after 25 years. But what drives me crazy about these parole boards is that it's such a F system, right? Because essentially she was not granted parole until she went in there and basically lied and said, I wasn't really a battered woman. I took his life and I take accountability for it. What I did was bad. What I did was wrong. And that, it seems like that's all the parole board wants from you, is just admit that you're wrong and we'll let you out, or you need to quote unquote take accountability for this, versus, maybe believing that, maybe this is,
or believing that she's been punished enough.
Yes.
If she has been a good inmate.
Yes.
If she is not a threat to society, 25 years, 20 years, whatever, that's a long time. Let her out.
Well, that's what I was wondering too, if they let her out because of COVID. Do you know what I mean? Because they let out a lot of people during COVID. And I kind of wonder if they were like, oh, F it, we got too many people, it's COVID, let her go. Because they let her out during in 2020.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know. But yeah, they it's such a cruel system.
It is.
And there's no, it's like we just want to punish and just warehouse people. and people who are no longer a threat, if they ever were a threat.
Yeah. Oh God, these men, right? Because that's a big thing. Men and women, but especially men. Men age out of.
Yeah.
They age out of crime.
They age out of crime.
They mellow. The testosterone lowers. They age out of crime, and we have these men that are like 70 years old in prison because they committed a crime when they were 20. And it's like, we're still housing them. It's just, that is a whole other show and another feeling about the prison system. But she got out in 2020, which is very nice. I felt like this has got a happy ending. And she meets another guy. And the one thing that I felt like, yes, Sally has grown, is she was like, I decided to take it slow. I'm like, thank you, Sally. Thank you.
Finally.
Because again, I would like to say she met right. 2 months later, they get married. Stop doing this. Why do people keep doing this?
She's older now. She's had a lot of time to think.
She's had a lot of time to think. I was like, oh, thank God, Sally, you get... And I think she's been with this guy for like a year. I'm like, okay, good. So she gets remarried to this guy who seems very sweet, very pleasant. He seems to really enjoy her. And they're living their best life now. And, she saw her kids and she's got grandchildren and, so I was very happy. I was like, this has got a happy ending.
I know.
I was just nervous.
Usually those kind of shows don't have a happy ending.
Because the bulk of her interview was her in prison.
Yeah. And so I thought she's still there.
I was just like, oh, Jesus, this is it. But that made me very, very happy to see that she was released, that she's on the other side of it and she can enjoy this next section of her life.
Yeah.
With this new husband.
Well, and another little interesting tidbit was when they were talking about the whole battered women syndrome, they had a couple of experts on there commenting about it. And the filmmaker said something to the effect of, well, are things different now? Mm-hmm. And the woman said, sadly, no.
No.
She said, there are still women going to prison for lengthy prison sentences for this. And I don't think a lot has changed about, how we feel about what constitutes a victim, having sympathy for victims, having understanding for victims. I don't think we've come all that far.
No. And what's interesting too, is they talked about so she and Ray got together in 87. The murder happens in 95. And this was a year after OJ.
Yeah, it was the same year.
And so, because the OJ killing it was
95.
No, it was 94.
Well, the trial was in 95.
Yeah, the murder was in 94. The trial was in 95. And so even though this was being talked about in the news constantly, it was something that people were constantly bringing up with that case. And a very similar case, like blonde woman, black man, athlete, God knows what OJ's done over the years, and TBI, other things that have attributed to OJ. But that even then, after that, we still, back then we still couldn't get it together,
right,
and be able to see it for what it is. And now here we are in this whole new world that we live in, where it is like believe women and listening to victims. We still are, just he can beat the crap out of you, but God forbid you fight back. Then
and it was interesting because they were mentioning some of the other cases that were happening in the 90s. So there was like the Amy Buttafuoco or Joey Buttafuoco,
Lorena Bobbitt, who was also horribly abused. She's got a documentary.
Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding. And Tonya Harding was a victim of abuse. And it's interesting because some of these things have come back and they've gotten some redemption, like that movie, I, Tonya, which really told the story from Tonya Harding's perspective and tried to redeem her. These women were just villainized. Yeah,
Lorena Bobbitt was made to be insane and crazy, and she also was a victim of abuse. And John Wayne Bobbitt, wasn't he military?
Yeah, I think
he was military too. And there were a lot of them in that. And this was also, a couple years post Monica Lewinsky and all of that, where women in the 90s were made to be, we were just these awful people.
And then all the cringy clips from E.T. and Hard Copy, or all these shows where they were every night giving these women these names, like, God, what did they call, they called Amy, what is her last name? The Long Island
Fisher.
Amy Fisher, the Long Island Lolita, and they had a name for Sally, something like the Pumped Up Princess, and so horrible.
Yeah.
Horribly exploitive, like just awful to women. I mean, it's disgusting.
Yeah. Well, but no, none of it's gotten better. It's so funny. There's all these podcasts now that just, where the entire podcast is about one person after another who tells the story of their horrendous boyfriend or partner or husband who abused them and stalked them and, all of that. And these stories, are still happening. And yet, I don't know what's the solution. I don't know what the solution is at this point.
Well,
nothing is changing.
I think we need to change how men are raised and what they're taught, because they are the perpetrators.
Yes.
And that's the thing. It's like everything that happens to women are expected to solve. Everything that's happening to people of color, they're expected to solve. That's not women's problem to solve. The men need to be taught better, raised better, held accountable. It's like, why are men so violent? Some men, not all men, obviously. But yeah, why?
But yeah. Well, but we can see, right? You see that her son, John, who seems like such a sweet, kind boy, and then you hear him abusing about him,
right?
And he took ownership of, he's saying, yeah, I perpetuated this violence. I've been around violence my entire life.
Well, it's a learned behavior.
Yeah.
And even though nobody intended to teach him that, he just learned it by just living. Like, he was living in a home where this was happening. And then he went into the military, and he made some comment about how my entire life has just been about nothing but violence and, war. And so, but at least he's redeemable, because that's not like his nature. He was just a sweet little boy.
Yeah. Well, and that you brought up something earlier too, which is, it is very common, because I've seen this, that many people that go into bodybuilding and want to get these big muscles are because they were abused. It is very, very common for both men and women to, be abused and then want to defend themselves. And so it is this, no matter how you feel about Sally or Ray, they were both abused. They were very, then attracted to bodybuilding and then meet each other. It's like, it's this feeling of just, it's like a runaway train, that you can really see how everyone got to where they are, but it just feels like something's got to be different. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if Runaway Train is really the best example of that. I don't know.
Well, this is a very good docu-series, whatever you want to call it. And
yes, we give it thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Yes, I thought it was well done. I thought it was, again, like I said, short to the point.
Yeah, not too long.
Not too long. And yeah.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Well,
all right. You want to take us home, Brooke?
Sure. So thanks for listening if you made it to the end of this, and we would appreciate it if you like the podcast, if you would subscribe and give us a 5-star review. That would really help us out. And we will see you soon, or talk to you soon.
Yes. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Give me a mountain with lots to do. Give me the sunshine, give me a dew. Give me something simple and true. All I need is sunshine and a cool, refreshing mountain dew. So give me my good friends, give me a dew.
Grab some friends and an ice-cold Mountain Dew today.
Mountain Dew.